Hostile Takeover, Hidden Motives Episode 4, A Lucas Sinclair Mystery, written by Delilah Moonbeam, read by Silas. Chapter 1. Lucas Sinclair's office smelled of stale coffee, and a stack of case files crowded his desk. He reached for his cup, his third since arriving at 5 a.m., and winced at the tepid bitterness. The Carson case file lay open before him, crime scene photos spread in a grim mosaic. 6 years unsolved. He twirled a pen between his fingers, lost in thought. The office door swung open with enough force to rattle the blinds. Emily Carter stood in the doorway, her auburn hair pulled back in its customary ponytail, her green eyes wide with urgency. "Morning to you too," Lucas said, not looking up from the file. "Drop whatever cold case you're obsessing over," Emily said, slightly out of breath. "We've got a fresh one, a big one." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Define big." "Miranda Lou, CEO of Pinnacle Innovations." Emily tossed that morning's copy of the Ravenswood Chronicle onto his desk. The same Miranda Lou who was just featured in Ravenswood Business Monthly for their medical breakthrough. Lucas straightened in his chair, recognition dawning. The neural interface company? The one that's supposed to help paralyzed patients walk again? That's the one. Their night janitor found her at her desk with a bullet in her chest about an hour ago. Emily checked her watch. "Chief wants us on this yesterday." Lucas drained his coffee and grabbed his jacket. "What about Michael's? Homicide's usually his territory on Thursdays. His wife went into labor last night. Besides," Emily flashed a quick smile, "Chief specifically asked for you. Said something about needing your particular brand of stubborn on this one." "Lucky me," Lucas muttered, but he was already mentally shifting gears from the cold case to this fresh homicide. "What else do we know?" "Not much. Security footage shows her working late. No sign of forced entry. Executive floor requires keycard access." Emily followed him out of the office. "Oh, and the mayor's already called the chief twice this morning." Lucas grimaced. "Of course he has." The morning air carried a bite as they crossed the parking lot to Lucas's sedan. Autumn in Ravenswood painted the city in amber and gold, but Lucas barely noticed the seasonal beauty. His mind was already at the crime scene. "Mayor Matthews has his fingerprints all over half the development projects in this city," Lucas said as he made his way through early morning traffic. "What's his connection to Pinnacle?" Emily tapped on her tablet. "Major campaign donor. Also, the company employs over 300 Ravenswood citizens and is projected to add another 100 jobs next year." She looked up. "That's a lot of voters and tax revenue. And a lot of political pressure to solve this quickly and quietly," Lucas added. 10 minutes later, they pulled up to the gleaming glass tower that housed Pinnacle Innovations. Yellow police tape already cordoned off the main entrance, officers redirecting confused employees to a side door. Lucas flashed his badge at the uniformed officer managing the lobby. "Detective Sinclair, homicide. This is Officer Carter." The officer nodded. 45th floor, sir. CSI is already up there." The executive elevator moved efficiently to its destination, its polished walls reflecting Lucas's perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and Emily's alert posture. "You ever been inside one of these tech companies?" Emily asked. Lucas shook his head, too busy solving murders to join the digital revolution. Emily rolled her eyes before continuing. "My brother works at a startup across town. Says these places are pressure cookers. Brilliant people, big money, bigger egos." She watched the floor numbers climb. Perfect recipe for conflict. "And now murder," Lucas added as the elevator door opened. The 45th floor bustled with controlled chaos. Crime scene technicians photographed and collected evidence while uniformed officers secured the perimeter. Through the glass walls of the corner office, Lucas could see Dr. Trevor Lee bent over a body slumped across an expansive desk. "Morning, Trevor," Lucas said, approaching the medical examiner. Dr. Lee glanced up, his glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Lucas, Emily." He nodded to each of them. "Busy morning for Ravenswood's finest." "What can you tell us?" Lucas asked, pulling on latex gloves. "Single gunshot wound to the chest." Dr. Lee indicated the blood stain on Miranda's cream blouse. "Close range, judging by the powder burns. Defensive wounds on her hands, she put up a fight." He gently opened one of the victim's hands to reveal crescent-shaped cuts on her palms. Time of death between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Lucas studied Miranda Lou. Even in death, she exuded authority. Early 40s, sleek dark hair, expensive but understated jewelry. Looks like she was standing when she was shot, Lucas observed, noting the blood spatter, then collapsed onto the desk. Correct, Dr. Lee confirmed. The shooter was facing her, probably from that side of the desk. He gestured toward the visitor's chair. The bullet trajectory is slightly downward. Lucas leaned closer, noticing a crumpled piece of paper in Miranda's other hand. What's she holding? Dr. Lee carefully extracted the paper using tweezers. Looks like financial figures. Partial document, torn in half. Lucas examined the paper through its evidence bag. Rows of numbers, most likely financial data, with several entries circled in angry red pen. Her office is immaculate, Emily observed, gesturing to the color-coded files and precisely arranged desk accessories. Except for this. She pointed to scattered papers and an overturned chair. She struggled with her killer, Lucas concluded, surveying the disruption. Trevor, any signs she knew her attacker? No defensive wounds on her forearms or face, which suggests she wasn't initially afraid when the person entered. Dr. Lee closed his medical bag. I'll know more after the autopsy, but my preliminary finding is that she was shot once at close range by someone standing in front of her desk. The bullet likely pierced her heart, causing rapid blood loss and death within minutes. Time for us to talk to whoever found the body, Lucas said. A young officer approached. Detective, the night janitor who discovered the body is waiting in the break room, and Mr. Palmer, the company COO, just arrived. Lucas nodded. Emily, take the janitor's statement. I'll handle Palmer. A tall man with salt and pepper hair strode purposefully off the elevator, his tailored suit slightly rumpled as if hastily put on. He stopped abruptly at the crime scene tape, staring through the glass walls at Miranda's body with visible shock. Mr. Palmer? Lucas approached, extending his hand. Detective Lucas Sinclair, Ravenswood PD. Palmer's handshake was firm despite his pallor. David Palmer, COO. His voice cracked slightly. I still can't believe it. I understand this is difficult, Lucas said, guiding Palmer away from the direct view of the crime scene. When did you last see Ms. Lou? Palmer ran a hand through his hair, visibly struggling to compose himself. Yesterday afternoon around 4. We had a board meeting about the Pharmatech acquisition. Pharmatech Industries. We were finalizing a $200 million deal to acquire their biotech division. Palmer swallowed hard. The deal is set to close tomorrow. Lucas watched Palmer's expression carefully. That's a significant deal. It's transformative, Palmer agreed. Miranda built this company from nothing 10 years ago. This acquisition would cement Pinnacle as a global leader in medical technology. His gaze drifted back toward the office, anxiety creeping into his voice. What happens to the deal now? That would depend on your company bylaws, Lucas said neutrally, noting Palmer's quick pivot to business concerns. Mr. Palmer, can you think of anyone who would want to harm Ms. Lou? Palmer shook his head. Miranda was brilliant, driven. She could be demanding, but she was universally respected. He paused. There are always competitors who'd love to see us fail, but murder? That's unthinkable. Were there any internal conflicts? Disagreements about company direction? Lucas pressed. Nothing serious, Palmer insisted. Standard executive debates. Miranda and I disagreed occasionally on strategy, but we always reached consensus. Lucas decided to change tack. Tell me about the Pharmatech deal. Was everyone on board? Absolutely. It's been Miranda's focus for months. Their patient monitoring technology complements our neural interface perfectly. Palmer pulled on his tie. The timing of this is devastating. I'll need a list of everyone with access to this floor, Lucas said. Of course, I'll have HR compile it immediately. Palmer pulled out his phone, then hesitated. Detective, Pinnacle employs over 300 people in Ravenswood. We're on the verge of a breakthrough that could help millions of patients. The publicity from this will be discreet, Mr. Palmer, Lucas assured him, but finding who killed Miss Lou is our priority. Palmer nodded, appearing both relieved and concerned. I understand. I want that too. Emily approached and pulled Lucas to the side, having finished with the janitor. The janitor confirms he found Miss Lou at 5:30 a.m. during his regular cleaning rounds. He immediately called security, who contacted emergency services. Anything unusual about the building last night? Visitors? Alarms? Lucas asked. Not according to the janitor, Emily replied. but he only arrived at midnight for his shift. "You're welcome to use our conference room, detectives," Palmer offered after finishing his call. "I'll have our security team provide whatever you need." After Palmer left to speak with the company's legal counsel, Lucas returned to Miranda's office with Emily. "What's your read on Palmer?" Emily asked quietly. "Professional, controlled, appropriately shaken." Lucas shrugged. "But awfully quick to worry about the business implications." "To be fair, $200 million deals don't come along every day," Emily countered. "Could be genuine concern about the company's future." "Or his future," Lucas mused. "Let's see what else we can find in Miranda's office." Emily was examining the victim's computer. "Password protected," she reported. "We'll need IT to access it. I'll get read on it." Lucas nodded, turning his attention to Miranda's desk calendar. Flipping through the pages, he paused at yesterday's date. Written in precise handwriting at 8 p.m. was a cryptic entry: "LP confrontation, final warning." "Emily, look at this." He pointed to the notation. She frowned. "LP? Linda Palmer? Lisa Peterson? Let's ask Palmer." Lucas found the CO in the conference room, speaking quietly to a woman in a dark suit who Lucas presumed was company counsel. "Mr. Palmer, we found an entry in Ms. Lou's calendar for last night." Lucas showed him a photo of the page. "Can you explain what LP confrontation final warning might refer to?" Palmer studied the notation, his brow furrowing. "I honestly don't know. LP could be several things, maybe Lawson Pharmaceuticals? We've had some patent disputes with them recently." "And the final warning part?" Emily pressed. "Miranda could be direct when protecting company interests," Palmer explained carefully. "If someone was infringing on our patents, she wouldn't hesitate to confront them." "I'll need the contact information for Lawson Pharmaceuticals," Lucas said, "and any documentation of your patent disputes." "Of course." Palmer nodded to the woman beside him. "Jenna, our legal counsel, can provide those." The woman nodded crisply. "I'll have the files sent to you within the hour, detective." Before Lucas could ask another question, the elevator doors opened to reveal Chief Christine Watson. Her crisp uniform and authoritative presence immediately drew attention as she crossed to where they stood. "Sinclair, a word?" It wasn't really a question. Lucas followed the chief to a quiet corner of the floor. Chief Watson's expression was grave, her voice low. "I need to emphasize the sensitivity of this case," she began without preamble. "Miranda Lou wasn't just any CEO. She was a major campaign donor to the mayor, a leading employer in Ravenswood, and the face of technological innovation in our city." Lucas nodded. "I understand the profile, Chief." "Do you?" Her gaze was piercing. "Because the mayor has already called me twice this morning. The last thing we need is unnecessary speculation damaging a company that employs hundreds of our citizens. We'll be thorough and discreet," Lucas promised. Chief Watson's tone softened slightly. "That's why I assigned you to this case, Sinclair. You're stubborn enough to find the truth regardless of pressure, but smart enough to know how to navigate political waters." "Thank you, I think." Watson almost smiled. "Keep me posted." She turned to leave, then added, "And Sinclair, wherever this leads, follow it. Just do it carefully." After the chief departed, Lucas rejoined Emily, who was organizing their initial notes. "Political pressure already?" she asked quietly. "As expected." Lucas glanced at his watch. "Let's finish up here and head back to the station. I want to start background checks on everyone with access to this floor." "Starting with Palmer?" Emily suggested. "Everyone," Lucas emphasized. "From the CEO to the night janitor. I want financial records, personal histories, relationships to the victim. Everything." Emily nodded. "I'll start the paperwork for the warrant on Miranda's accounts and communications." "Good. Also, have Reed pull the security footage from last night. I want to see everyone who entered and exited this floor." As they prepared to leave, Lucas's phone rang. The display showed an unfamiliar number. "Sinclair," he answered. "Detective, this is Marcus Reed, night security supervisor at Pinnacle." The man's voice was tense. "I was told to contact you with any important information." "Well, I was reviewing last night's security logs. There's something you need to know." Lucas led Emily to an empty room before he put the call on speaker for her to hear. "Go ahead, Mr. Reed." "The security camera in Miss Lou's office hallway was disabled last night from 11:42 p.m. to 11:49 p.m., exactly 7 minutes. Lucas and Emily exchanged sharp glances. "How was it disabled?" That's the thing, Detective. Reed lowered his voice. It was shut down using an executive override code. According to our logs, it was Mr. Palmer's code that authorized the shutdown. Emily's eyebrows shot up as Lucas processed this information. The timing aligned perfectly with their estimated time of death. Mr. Reed, don't mention this to anyone else, Lucas instructed. We'll be right down to review the logs ourselves. Lucas ended the call, his gaze meeting Emily's. Seems our grieving business partner has some explaining to do. Chapter 2. Lucas led David Palmer to the glass-walled conference room, deliberately selecting it for its transparency. The COO's polished appearance had lost some of its luster, his tailored suit now wrinkled, his eyes shadowed with fatigue and concern. Let's talk about the security camera, Mr. Palmer, Lucas said, closing the door behind them. Palmer's brow furrowed. What about it? Lucas placed his notebook on the sleek conference table. The security camera outside Miss Lou's office was disabled for exactly 7 minutes last night, between 11:42 and 11:49 p.m. And? Palmer asked, then his eyes widened as understanding dawned. Wait, you're not suggesting it was your executive override code that authorized the shutdown? Palmer's mouth fell open. That's impossible. I wasn't even here. Your code was used, Lucas pressed, watching Palmer's reaction carefully. Not your presence. Palmer ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, his composure momentarily fractured. Detective, executive codes are occasionally shared with administrative assistants during late meetings. Sometimes security needs temporary access to restricted areas. He shook his head. Miranda and I both had administrative staff with knowledge of our codes. Who specifically had access to your code? Palmer reached for his phone. I'll have HR compile a list immediately. But I can tell you Miranda's executive assistant, Jessica Chen, definitely had it, as did Calvin Reeves, our head of IT security. He looked up from his phone. I know how this looks, Detective, but I was at dinner with Pharmatech executives until 10:30 p.m. After that, I went straight home and took a business call in my office until midnight. Can anyone verify that? The dinner? Absolutely. At least 6 people, including Ted Royce, Pharmatech's CEO. Palmer straightened his tie, regaining composure. As for my call afterward, my home security system logs entry and exit times. It'll confirm I arrived home at approximately 10:45 p.m. and didn't leave again until this morning. Lucas nodded, making notes. We'll need that list as soon as possible. Of course. Palmer stood. Detective, I built this company alongside Miranda for 10 years. Whatever our occasional disagreements, I would never, he broke off, his voice catching. I want whoever did this caught as much as you do. Lucas watched him leave, then rejoined Emily in the executive suite. What's your take? She asked quietly. Either a very convincing performance or genuine shock, Lucas replied. Let's split up. You interview the executive team while I go through Miranda's personal effects. Emily nodded and headed toward a row of offices, while Lucas returned to Miranda's office, now cleared by the forensics team. He began with the desk drawers, methodically working through organized files and personal items. The bottom drawer contained a framed photo of Miranda with a younger woman at what appeared to be a gallery opening. He turned it over, reading the inscription. To Miranda, my brilliant wife, whose drive and ambition inspire me daily. All my love, Linda. Something about the photo's placement, face down in a bottom drawer, suggested a relationship that had soured. Lucas continued his search, paying particular attention to areas that seemed less accessible. When he pressed against the back panel of the top drawer, it gave slightly. Lucas carefully removed the items in front, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a manila envelope containing legal documents, divorce papers. Lucas quickly scanned them, noting the proceedings had begun nearly a year ago but were still ongoing. More interesting were the revised settlement terms dated just last week. Changes that would significantly reduce Linda Lou's settlement if the Pharmatech acquisition went through before the end of the quarter. Motive, Lucas murmured, photographing the documents before carefully returning them. The Azimuth Gallery occupied a renovated warehouse in Ravenswood's trendy arts district. High ceilings and exposed brick provided the perfect backdrop for the modern art installations scattered throughout the space. Linda Lou, a slim woman in her early 40s with a sleek bob and designer clothing, directed workers hanging a massive abstract canvas. No, higher on the left, she called, gesturing emphatically. It needs to catch the light from the skylight. Miss Lou? Lucas approached, badge in hand. Detective Lucas Sinclair, Ravenswood PD. Linda turned, her expression freezing as she spotted the badge. What can I do for you, detective? I'd like to ask you a few questions about your ex-wife, Miranda Lou. Her spine stiffened. Has something happened to Miranda? Lucas studied her reaction. Perhaps we could speak privately. Linda hesitated, then nodded curtly to her staff. Take 5, everyone. She led Lucas to a small office at the rear of the gallery, closing the door behind them. What's this about? I'm sorry to inform you that Miranda Lou was found dead in her office this morning. Linda's composure cracked, shock washing over her face as she sank into her chair. Dead? How? She was murdered sometime last night. Murdered? Linda's hand flew to her mouth. That's, my God. When did you last speak with her? Linda's eyes narrowed, professional wariness replacing shock. Are you implying I'm a suspect, detective? I'm gathering information at this stage. We spoke last week about financial matters. Her voice hardened. The divorce settlement. I understand there were recent revisions to your settlement negotiations, Lucas said. Changes that would significantly reduce your payout if the pharmatech deal went through. Linda's laugh held no humor. Of course you found those. Yes, Miranda was trying to minimize what I'd receive from the acquisition. Typical Miranda, always business first. That must have been frustrating. Infuriating, Linda corrected, standing to pace the small office. 10 years I supported her while she built Pinnacle. 10 years of lonely dinners and canceled vacations, and when I finally had enough, she stopped herself, drawing a deep breath. But that doesn't mean I killed her. Lucas watched her carefully. Why did your marriage end, Miss Lou? Linda stared out the window for a long moment before answering. The official story was her workaholic tendencies and my need for a partner who was actually present. She turned back to face Lucas. The reality? Miranda discovered I was having an affair. With whom? David Palmer. Linda's smile was bitter. Cliché, isn't it? The neglected spouse seeking comfort with the business partner. Lucas kept his expression neutral despite the significant revelation. How did Miranda react? How do you think? She was furious. Not because she'd lost me, we'd been drifting apart for years. She was furious because I'd betrayed her with David, whom she considered her only equal. Linda crossed her arms. She threw me out that night and filed for divorce the next morning. And your relationship with Palmer ended badly. Linda's expression darkened. Once Miranda knew, David ended things immediately. Chose the company over me. I haven't spoken to him in nearly 2 years. Lucas nodded, making notes. And the divorce has been dragging on since then? Miranda's lawyers have been stalling, Linda said bitterly. Every time we get close to finalizing, they find something new to contest. Last week's revision was just the latest delay tactic. Where were you last night between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m.? I hosted a preview of our new exhibition. At least 30 people can verify my presence here until after midnight, including the mayor's cultural affairs director. I'll need those names. My assistant will provide them. Linda sighed, genuine grief finally breaking through her defensive posture. Despite everything, detective, I never wanted harm to come to Miranda. She was brilliant, driven, impossible to live with, but remarkable. The world is lesser without her. Lucas handed her his card. Call me if you think of anything that might help our investigation. I will. Linda hesitated. Have you spoken with David about our history? Not yet. Something flashed in her eyes, concern or perhaps warning. Be careful, detective. David Palmer is a master at presenting exactly the face he wants you to see. Back at headquarters, Lucas found Reed Turner hunched over Miranda's laptop. The tech specialist's rumpled appearance and the empty energy drink cans surrounding him suggested he'd been working non-stop since receiving the device. Tell me you've got something, Lucas said. Reed pushed his glasses up his nose. Oh, I've got something all right. He gestured to his monitor. Ms. Lou was careful, but she wasn't a tech expert. I recovered partially deleted emails between her and someone using an encrypted account. Lucas leaned in. What do they say? It's fragmented, but the gist is clear. Miranda discovered financial irregularities in the company books and was threatening to go public. Reed scrolled through recovered message fragments. The most recent exchange was heated. Miranda wrote, "I have the proof now. Either we address this now or I go to the board tomorrow." Any trace of who she was communicating with? Reed shook his head. The recipient used serious encryption. But here's the interesting part. Miranda had scheduled a meeting with Pinnacle's outside legal counsel for 9 a.m. today. A meeting she didn't live to attend, Lucas mused. Anything else? Still working on her calendar and financial records. I'll let you know what I find. Lucas nodded. Good work. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Got Palmer's employee list. Former head of accounting looks promising. Greg Miller, fired 6 months ago. Address attached. Lucas arrived at Greg Miller's apartment building 20 minutes later. Paint peeled from the exterior, and the elevator was marked with an out-of-order sign. Lucas climbed 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3C and knocked. After a long pause, the door opened a crack, secured by a chain. A man in his mid-30s with thinning hair and wary eyes peered out. Greg Miller? Detective Lucas Sinclair, Ravenswood PD. The man's eyes widened. Is this about Miranda? You've heard? Miller nodded, his expression grim. It's all over the news. He closed the door to remove the chain, then opened it fully. I figured someone would come eventually. The apartment was small but neat, with financial textbooks lining the shelves and a desk covered with spreadsheets. You worked at Pinnacle? Lucas asked, taking the offered seat at a small dining table. 6 months ago, I was head of accounting. Miller's mouth twisted bitterly. Now I do freelance bookkeeping and eat a lot of ramen. What happened? Miller hesitated, studying Lucas. I'm under a pretty restrictive NDA. Miranda Lou was murdered, Mr. Miller. That supersedes any NDA. Miller's shoulders slumped. I questioned some of Palmer's financial maneuvers. Nothing illegal at first, just aggressive accounting that pushed ethical boundaries. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. But then I noticed research funds being diverted to accounts that didn't match any approved projects. Did you confront Palmer? I brought my concerns to Miranda first. She seemed genuinely surprised and promised to look into it. Miller's expression darkened. 2 days later, I was called to Palmer's office, accused of incompetence, and fired on the spot. Security escorted me out like a criminal. What reason did Palmer give? Officially? Budget cuts and restructuring. Miller laughed without humor. The real message was delivered when I tried to fight it. Palmer's lawyer made it very clear. Sign the NDA with its generous severance or face a lawsuit that would bankrupt me and ensure I never worked in finance again. And Miranda? Did she intervene? She was conveniently out of the country when it happened. By the time she returned, I was gone. Miller stood and retrieved a folder from his desk. But I kept copies of what I found. I knew someday someone would come asking the right questions. Lucas flipped through the documents, spreadsheets showing money movements to offshore accounts, unauthorized transfers, questionable expense reports. Why didn't you take this to the police? Against David Palmer? The man's connected to half the power players in Ravenswood. Without Miranda's backing, who'd believe me? Miller shook his head. Besides, nothing here proves criminal activity, just financial maneuvers that deserve scrutiny. Lucas continued examining the documents. Did you maintain any contact with Miranda after your termination? She called me once, about a month ago. Wouldn't say much, just that she discovered something concerning and wanted to verify some accounting practices. Miller's expression grew solemn. She sounded worried, which wasn't like her. This is helpful, Mr. Miller. Lucas handed him his card. If you think of anything else. There is one more thing, Miller interrupted. The week before I was fired, Palmer made a comment during a budget meeting about an acquisition that would transform the company. No details, very hush-hush. From his reaction when I asked about it later, I got the impression whatever accounting maneuvers I discovered were connected to preparing for this deal. The Pharmatech acquisition? Miller nodded. That would fit the timeline. And if Palmer was cooking the books to make Pinnacle more attractive to buyers, he left the implication hanging. Thanks for your time. Lucas stood to leave. I may have more questions later. Detective? Miller called as Lucas reached the door. Miranda wasn't perfect, but she believed in what Pinnacle was creating. Real innovations that could help people. Whatever else she might have been, she didn't deserve this. Lucas nodded acknowledgement and headed down the stairs, processing the new information. Miller's documents provided context but not definitive proof of motive. Still, combined with the security camera override and Palmer's dinner alibi, patterns were emerging. His phone rang as he reached his car. Emily's voice was tense with excitement. "Lucas, you need to get back here now. Building security found something on backup surveillance footage." "What is it?" "Footage from the garage level. Palmer and Miranda having a heated argument near her car at 10:45 p.m. last night." Emily's words tumbled out rapidly. "He lied about his alibi, Lucas. He wasn't at home on a business call. He was at Pinnacle, fighting with Miranda less than 2 hours before her estimated time of death." Lucas's grip tightened on his phone. "I'm on my way." Chapter 3. The search warrant for Miranda Lou's residence had come through quickly. Lucas's sedan crunched over the gravel driveway of the modernist lakefront home as evening settled over Ravenswood. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the water, reflecting the sunset in sheets of orange fire. "Nice place," Emily remarked as they approached the door. "Guess innovation pays well." Lucas nodded. "Let's see what secrets Miranda kept at home that she couldn't at the office." The house was immaculate. All clean lines, minimalist furniture, and carefully curated art pieces. Everything in its place, much like Miranda's office had been. They moved through the main living areas before focusing on Miranda's home office, a spacious room with a desk positioned to maximize the lake view. "Same organizational system as her work office," Emily noted, examining the color-coded files and neatly arranged reference materials. Lucas ran his hand along the edge of an abstract painting, bold strokes of red and black across a white canvas. Something about its placement seemed deliberate. Unlike the other artwork, which was centered perfectly on walls, this piece hung slightly off-center. "Emily," he called, "help me with this." Together they carefully removed the painting, revealing a wall safe behind it. "Conventional hiding spot for an unconventional woman," Lucas mused. "Can you crack it?" Emily asked. Lucas examined the digital keypad. "Let's try the obvious first." He punched in Miranda's birth date from her file. Nothing. He tried the founding date of Pinnacle Innovations. Again, nothing. Emily leaned in. "What about the date she filed for divorce from Linda?" Lucas raised an eyebrow, then nodded. "Worth a shot." He entered the date, and with a satisfying click, the safe unlocked. Inside lay a leather-bound ledger, several USB drives, and a stack of documents. Lucas carefully removed the ledger while Emily bagged the USBs for Reed to analyze later. "Look at this," Lucas said, opening the ledger. Inside were meticulous notes in Miranda's precise handwriting, documenting financial transactions within Pinnacle, all authorized by Palmer. Each entry included dates, amounts, and brief annotations questioning their purpose or legitimacy. "She was building a case against him," Emily said, peering over his shoulder. Lucas flipped to the most recent entry, dated the day of her murder. Miranda had written, "Confirmation received, DP falsified research data to inflate company value before Pharmatech acquisition. Meeting with Lester and Barnes tomorrow to discuss legal options." "Lester and Barnes, that's the outside counsel Reed mentioned," Emily said. Lucas nodded grimly. Palmer must have wanted to silence her before that meeting. Emily moved to Miranda's desk, powering up her home computer. "Password protected, of course, but look at this." She pointed to a printed email in the outbox tray. "From Palmer to Miranda, sent yesterday afternoon." Lucas read aloud. "Miranda, think carefully before tomorrow. Remember what happened to Miller when he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Some things are better left undiscussed until after the acquisition. For everyone's sake." "That sounds an awful lot like a threat," Emily said. Lucas photographed the email, adding it to their growing collection of evidence. "Let's see how Palmer explains this one." David Palmer's downtown penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Palladium, one of Ravenswood's most exclusive addresses. The doorman had called up to announce their arrival, and they'd been reluctantly permitted entry. The elevator opened directly into a vast living space with panoramic views of the city. Palmer stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the glittering skyline, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He wasn't alone. A woman in her 50s wearing an impeccably tailored suit sat at the dining table, a laptop open before her. "Detective Sinclair, Officer Carter," Palmer said without turning. This is my attorney, Diane Morris. The woman rose, extending a perfectly manicured hand. I've advised my client to cooperate fully with your investigation, though I must say, arriving unannounced at this hour is hardly conventional. Murder investigations rarely keep business hours, Ms. Morris, Lucas replied, shaking her hand briefly. Palmer finally turned, his expression carefully neutral. What can I help you with? Lucas laid the photographs of Miranda's ledger and the threatening email on the glass coffee table. You want to explain these? Palmer barely glanced at them before Morris intercepted, picking them up to examine them herself. These documents have no context, she said smoothly. My client isn't obligated to speculate on their meaning. Lucas fixed his gaze on Palmer. We have security footage showing you arguing with Miranda in the Pinnacle parking garage at 10:45 last night, the exact time you claimed to be at home on a business call. Palmer's mask slipped momentarily, surprise flickering across his face before Morris intervened again. My client will need a moment to review this new information. No, Palmer said suddenly. It's all right, Diane. He set down his glass and approached Lucas. Yes, I saw Miranda last night. I followed her to the parking garage after my dinner with the Pharmatech executives. Why lie about it? Emily asked. Because I knew how it would look, Palmer admitted. We argued, yes, about the acquisition and her concerns. I only wanted to convince her to delay her meeting with legal counsel until after the deal closed. Once Pharmatech's money was in the bank, we could address any discrepancies internally. Discrepancies? Lucas pressed. You mean the falsified research data she discovered? Palmer shot a glance at Morris, who subtly shook her head. My client cannot speak to allegations about research data without proper context, Morris interjected. Let me be clear, Mr. Palmer, Lucas said. Miranda Lou discovered you were falsifying data to artificially inflate Pinnacle's value before the acquisition. When she threatened to expose you, you silenced her, permanently. Palmer's face hardened. That's absurd. Yes, we argued. Yes, I returned to Pinnacle last night, but only to the garage. After our argument, I went straight home. I never went back up to the office. Can anyone verify that? My building's security system logs my entry at 11:05 p.m., Palmer said. Check it yourself. Morris stepped forward. Detective, my client has been forthcoming about his interaction with Ms. Lou last night. But you should know that if anyone was manipulating research data, it was more likely Miranda herself. Excuse me? Emily's eyebrows shot up. Miranda stood to lose control of her company through this acquisition, Palmer explained. She'd been increasingly erratic in recent weeks, second-guessing the deal she herself had negotiated. I believe she was looking for ways to sabotage it. That contradicts everything we've heard about her, Lucas said. You didn't know her like I did, Palmer replied, a hint of sadness creeping into his voice. She couldn't bear the thought of answering to a board of directors, of becoming just another corporate division. I worried she might tank the deal at the last minute. Lucas studied Palmer carefully. The man was good, every statement delivered with just the right mix of regret and conviction. But the evidence told a different story. We'll need a formal statement from you, Lucas said finally. And Mr. Palmer, don't make any travel plans. We're not done here. As they headed for the elevator, Morris followed them. Detective, she said quietly, my client is cooperating fully, but these unfounded accusations are approaching harassment. We follow the evidence, Ms. Morris, Lucas replied. Tell your client that. Back at Pinnacle headquarters, the night security team escorted them to the secure server room in the basement. Reed Turner waited for them, his lean frame perched on a stool as he typed away on his laptop keyboard. Thanks for coming back, Reed said without looking up. I've traced those encrypted emails to an account accessing Pinnacle's servers from within this building. Can you tell which computer they came from? Lucas asked. That's why I needed physical access. Reed connected his laptop to a server port. The company's internal security is actually pretty good. Took me a while to get around it. Lines of code scrolled across his screen as Reed worked. Emily paced the small room while Lucas watched Reed's progress. Got it, Reed announced after several minutes. The encrypted emails were sent from Palmer's executive terminal. He frowned, studying the data. But here's where it gets interesting. They were logged at times when Palmer's keycard shows him entering and exiting the building garage. What does that mean? Emily asked. It means he was establishing an electronic alibi, Lucas said, swiping his card to create a record of his movements while doing something else entirely. Reed nodded. Exactly. For instance, on October 12th, his card logged him leaving at 7:35 p.m., but an encrypted email was sent from his terminal at 8:20 p.m. Could someone else have used his computer? Emily asked. Possible but unlikely, Reed replied. Executive terminals require biometric authentication, fingerprint or facial recognition. Unless someone hacked that system, it had to be Palmer himself. Lucas's phone rang. He checked the display, an unknown number. Sinclair, he answered. Detective, it's Linda Lou. Her voice sounded tense. I need to speak with you. It's about Palmer. Lucas checked his watch. Nearly 10 p.m. Where are you? The Nightingale Diner on Westbrook. I'll be in the back booth. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The Nightingale was one of Ravenswood's few 24-hour establishments, a throwback to mid-century Americana with chrome fixtures and red vinyl booths. At this hour, it was nearly empty, just a few night shift workers nursing coffees at the counter. Linda Lou sat in the farthest booth, a cup of untouched tea before her. She'd changed from her gallery attire into more casual clothes, though her makeup remained impeccable. Thank you for coming, she said as Lucas slid into the seat across from her. You said you had information about Palmer. Linda glanced around before leaning forward. About a month ago, David contacted me out of the blue, said he wanted to clear the air, have dinner to discuss some loose ends from the divorce settlement. And did you? Yes, at La Maison downtown. It was surprisingly pleasant. Her fingers traced the rim of her cup. He was charming, attentive, just like when we first met. Asked about the gallery, seemed genuinely interested. At the end of the evening, he suggested we meet again. Did that strike you as odd, given your history? At first, I thought he might be lonely, or perhaps feeling guilty about how things ended. She shook her head. We met 3 more times over the following weeks. Each time, he became more familiar, suggesting we might rekindle what we had. And did you want that? Linda's laugh was hollow. God, no. I learned my lesson the first time. But I was curious why he'd suddenly decided to pursue me after all this time. Did he mention Miranda? Not directly. But during our last dinner, he made some comments that seemed significant now. Linda lowered her voice further. He said things were about to change at Pinnacle, and that Miranda would no longer be an obstacle once the acquisition went through. Lucas leaned forward. Those were his exact words? Linda nodded. At the time, I assumed he meant her management style or control of the company would be diluted after the merger. Standard corporate politics. Her face darkened. Now I wonder if he was testing me, seeing how I'd react to the idea of Miranda being gone. Did you tell anyone about these meetings? No. It seemed like ancient history not worth mentioning. Linda met his eyes directly. Detective, I disliked Miranda intensely toward the end of our marriage, but I never wished her harm. If I'd had any inkling of what David was planning. Why come forward now? Because I've been thinking about our conversations nonstop since I heard about Miranda's murder. Some of the things he said, she shuddered. I'm afraid I might have unwittingly encouraged him by listening sympathetically. And there's one more thing. During dinner last week, David excused himself to take a call. When he returned, he mentioned having to finalize arrangements for a rainy day. He seemed agitated but wouldn't elaborate. Lucas made notes as she spoke. This is all very helpful, Miss Lou. We may need a formal statement. Linda nodded. Of course, whatever you need. The station was quiet when Lucas returned. Emily was still at her desk, surrounded by financial documents. How was the ex-wife? She asked without looking up. Lucas filled her in on Linda's revelations. What have you found? Emily's expression was grim as she pushed a folder toward him. Palmer's been busy. 3 weeks ago, he purchased a private island in the Maldives through a shell corporation. 2 days later, he transferred $8 million to a bank there. Getting ready to run. That's not all. Emily handed him another document. He took out a massive life insurance policy on Miranda as a key person in the company 6 months ago. $50 million. Lucas studied the policy, and the benefits go directly to him as the surviving executive rather than to Pinnacle itself. According to the insurance broker I spoke with, that's highly unusual. Typically, key person insurance pays the company, not individuals. She tapped another document. Miranda probably had no idea this policy existed. Palmer listed himself as the policyholder and used his executive authority to bind the company to the premiums. Lucas sat on the edge of the desk, pieces falling into place. So Palmer falsifies research data to inflate Pinnacle's value for the pharmatech acquisition. Miranda discovers his deception and threatens to expose him. He kills her, expecting to collect $50 million in life insurance while also gaining complete control of the pharmatech deal. And he's got a tropical paradise and millions waiting for him once the dust settles, Emily added. Lucas's phone buzzed with an alert. He opened the message, his expression hardening as he read. "What is it?" Emily asked. "Airport police. Palmer's private jet just filed an emergency flight plan for immediate departure." Emily's eyes widened, but his lawyer agreed he wouldn't leave town. Seems Palmer has other ideas. Lucas pulled up the attached security footage on his phone. The grainy video showed Palmer rushing through the private terminal at Ravenswood Executive Airport, clutching a briefcase to his chest. That briefcase likely contains the acquisition documents he needs to close the deal without Miranda. "He's running," Emily said, already grabbing her jacket. "Not if we can help it." Lucas headed for the door, phone to his ear. "This is Detective Sinclair. I need units at Ravenswood Executive Airport immediately. David Palmer is attempting to flee jurisdiction." Chapter 4. The wail of sirens cut through the night as Lucas's sedan tore through Ravenswood's empty streets toward the executive airport. Emily gripped the dashboard, phone pressed to her ear. "They've delayed the flight, but Palmer's already past security," she reported. "The jet's taxiing now." Lucas pressed the accelerator harder. "Tell them to halt that plane at all costs." The Ravenswood Executive Airport came into view. 2 police cruisers had already arrived. As they pulled onto the tarmac, Lucas spotted the sleek Gulfstream jet slowly moving toward the main runway. He slammed the car into park and they sprinted toward the scene. Badges out. "Detective Sinclair, RPD," Lucas shouted to the airport security officer coordinating with the police. "That plane needs to stop now." "We're on it," the officer replied, speaking urgently into his radio. "Tower's ordering them to halt." Through the darkness, they watched as the jet slowed, then came to a complete stop halfway down the taxiway. Lucas and Emily approached rapidly, flanked by uniformed officers. "I want that door open," Lucas ordered, pointing to the aircraft. Minutes later, the cabin door lowered to reveal a startled flight attendant. "What's happening?" she asked. "Police investigation," Lucas stated, flashing his badge again. "We need to speak with David Palmer immediately." The interior of the private jet exuded wealth. Plush leather seats, polished wood accents, crystal decanters of amber liquid secured in custom holders. Palmer sat in a rear seat, his expression morphing from shock to indignation as Lucas and Emily entered. "Detective, this is completely unwarranted," Palmer said, clutching his laptop in a leather briefcase to his chest. "I'm conducting urgent business, not fleeing." "Urgent business that required an emergency flight plan filed at 11 p.m.? Lucas asked, nodding to an officer to secure the cabin door. "The Pharmatech board meets at 8 a.m. in Boston," Palmer explained. "I need to present the final acquisition documents in person." "You agreed through your attorney that you wouldn't leave town," Emily reminded him. Palmer straightened his tie, attempting to regain composure. "A misunderstanding. I intended to return immediately after the meeting." Lucas gestured to the briefcase. "Those would be the acquisition documents?" "Yes," Palmer said, his grip tightening. "Time-sensitive legal papers. Show me." "I don't have to." "You do if you want to avoid being arrested for obstruction right now," Lucas interrupted, "on top of being a person of interest in a murder investigation." Palmer's jaw clenched as he slowly opened the briefcase and removed a thick folder of legal documents. Lucas pulled on latex gloves before taking them. The top page bore the Pharmatech logo and Miranda's signature beside Palmer's own, both dated that very day. The dead woman's signature, remarkably fresh, practically accused Palmer from the page. "Interesting," Lucas said. "Miranda signed these today? That's quite a trick." "She pre-signed them yesterday," Palmer said quickly. "Standard practice for executives who travel frequently." "Where's your luggage, Mr. Palmer?" Emily asked, scanning the cabin. Just my carry-on, Palmer replied, nodding toward a leather duffel in the overhead compartment. Emily retrieved the bag and placed it on an empty seat. I must protest this invasion of privacy, Palmer objected, half rising. Sit down, Lucas ordered. You forfeited privacy when you attempted to flee jurisdiction. Emily opened the bag, methodically removing its contents. Designer clothes, toiletries, a tablet computer, all to be expected. Then she revealed a slim leather folder containing a passport. She flipped it open, her eyebrows rising. James Peterson, she read aloud. With your photo, Mr. Palmer. That's a mistake, Palmer stammered. Is this $50,000 in cash also a mistake? Emily continued, removing a vacuum-sealed package of $100 bills. Palmer's composure finally cracked. I want my attorney present. I'm not saying another word. That's probably wise, Lucas agreed, closing the folder of documents. David Palmer, you're under arrest for forgery and suspicion of murder. As Lucas recited the Miranda rights, Palmer sat rigidly. All pretense of cooperation vanished. The interrogation room at Ravenswood Police Department remained silent. Palmer sat stonily at the table, refusing even water. When the door opened to admit Lucas, he didn't look up. Your attorney's here, Lucas informed him. Diane Morris entered, her expression thunderous. She placed her briefcase on the table, with precise, controlled movements that barely contained her fury. I need the room, she told Lucas coldly. Lucas nodded. 5 minutes. In the observation room, Emily watched through the one-way glass as Morris leaned toward her client, speaking in low, intense tones. Though the words were inaudible, her body language conveyed unmistakable anger. She doesn't look happy, Emily commented. Clients who lie to their attorneys rarely make them happy, Lucas replied. Chief Watson entered, coffee in hand. What's the status? Palmer isn't talking, Lucas reported. Caught him trying to flee with acquisition documents bearing Miranda's forged signature, a fake passport, and $50,000 in cash. Sounds like a slam dunk, Watson observed. Almost too easy, Lucas mused. The door to the interrogation room opened, and Morris emerged alone. Her face was a professional mask, but the tightness around her eyes betrayed her emotions. A word, detective? She asked. Lucas followed her to a nearby conference room. I'm withdrawing as counsel for Mr. Palmer, Morris announced once the door closed. That's his right, but unusual timing, Lucas noted. Morris placed her hands flat on the table. I advised my client to cooperate fully, to remain in Ravenswood, and to maintain complete transparency with investigators. Advice he ignored. Indeed. Morris's perfectly manicured nails tapped once on the table. I cannot effectively represent a client who lies to me and undermines his own defense. Happens to the best attorneys. Morris gathered her belongings. Mr. Palmer has requested a public defender until he can secure new counsel. She paused at the door. Detective Sinclair, you might want to look into who actually benefits most from this acquisition going through. Palmer isn't the only player with skin in this game. Meaning? Meaning sometimes the most obvious suspect isn't the only guilty party. She pulled her coat on. Look deeper into pharma tech. You might find the answers interesting. After she left, Emily joined Lucas in the conference room. What was that about? Morris just gave us our next lead, Lucas said. How soon can we get to Pharmatech headquarters? First thing tomorrow, Emily replied. But Palmer isn't going anywhere, Lucas finished. And I have a feeling there's more to this case than just one greedy executive. Early the next morning, Lucas and Emily arrived at Pharmatech's headquarters, a gleaming glass building on the outskirts of the city's research park. The company's logo, a stylized double helix, adorned the entrance. The receptionist directed them to a waiting area while she notified Ted Royce's office of their arrival. The CEO's assistant, a crisp young man in a tailored suit, appeared promptly. Mr. Royce has a very tight schedule today, he informed them. He can give you 15 minutes. They were led through open concept offices to a corner suite with commanding views of the surrounding campus. Ted Royce rose from behind his desk, tall, trim, early 50s, with the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to control. Detectives, what can I do for Ravenswood's finest, he asked, his smile not reaching his eyes. Lucas declined the offered seat. We're investigating Miranda Lou's murder. A terrible tragedy, Royce said, shaking his head. Just as our companies were about to join forces. The timing couldn't be worse. Speaking of timing, Emily said, we understand the acquisition is still proceeding? Of course, Royce confirmed. The boards of both companies agreed that Miranda would have wanted her legacy to continue. David assured us everything was in order. David Palmer is currently in custody, Lucas informed him, watching carefully for a reaction. Royce's expression flickered briefly, not surprise, but calculation. On what charges? Forgery, for starters, possibly murder, Lucas said. We've discovered some concerning details about the acquisition. Such as your plan to acquire only Pinnacle's intellectual property while dissolving the rest of the company, Emily stated bluntly. Royce's practiced smile disappeared. Those are internal business matters. That would leave hundreds of Ravenswood citizens unemployed, Lucas pressed. Business often requires difficult decisions, Royce replied, mask firmly back in place. We would have offered generous severance packages. Lucas changed tactics. How long have you known David Palmer? We met during the acquisition negotiations, Royce said smoothly. Emily removed a photograph from her folder. Then perhaps you can explain this picture from your Harvard Business School reunion 5 years ago? You and Palmer seem quite friendly for people who supposedly just met during the acquisition. The photograph showed Royce and Palmer arm in arm, raising champagne glasses in a toast. Royce's jaw tightened. An oversight. We may have met at alumni events. Or perhaps you've been planning this acquisition for years, Lucas suggested. A long con to strip Pinnacle of its valuable research while enriching yourselves. That's absurd, Royce snapped. This conversation is over. Please contact Pharmatech's legal department for any further questions. As they left the office, Lucas noticed a framed photograph on a credenza. Royce shaking hands with Mayor Matthews at a charity gala. The mayor's campaign slogan was visible on a banner behind them. Politics and business, Lucas murmured. Always a cozy relationship in Ravenswood. Back in the car, Emily's phone rang. It's Reed, she said, answering on speaker. You need to see this, Reed's voice crackled with excitement. Palmer's laptop was encrypted, but I managed to access his cloud backup. There are messages between him and Royce dating back over a year, planning the takeover. We'll be right there, Lucas told him. Back in the tech lab, Reed brought up the recovered messages on his monitor. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd been working through the night. They were careful, Reed explained, using encrypted messaging apps and code words, but it was easy enough for me to figure out. He brought up a timeline of communications. They've been plotting this for at least 14 months. Palmer provided insider information about Pinnacle's research and financials, while Royce arranged the capital backing. And Miranda? Emily asked. She was always the obstacle, Reed replied, pulling up specific messages. They repeatedly discussed the M problem and how to neutralize her influence. Lucas leaned closer to the screen as Reed highlighted a message sent from Palmer to Royce at 12:17 a.m. Shortly after Miranda's estimated time of death. Problem eliminated. Proceed as discussed. That's damning, Lucas observed. It gets better, Reed continued. I checked cell tower data against Palmer's alibi. His phone pinged towers near Pinnacle at 11:35 p.m., directly contradicting his claim that he was home. Emily pulled up security camera footage on a second monitor. This is from the office building across from Pinnacle. Look at Miranda's office windows around midnight. The grainy nighttime footage showed lights in the corner office. A figure moved past the window, tall, male, with a distinctive posture matching Palmer's. He returned to the office after their garage confrontation, Lucas concluded. One more thing, Emily said, retrieving an evidence bag. I went back to examine Miranda's personal effects more carefully. She withdrew a sleek smartwatch, her fitness tracker. I asked Reed to check if it might have recorded anything useful. Reed nodded excitedly. Most people don't realize these devices can sometimes activate with sudden movements or voice commands. This one captured audio around the estimated time of death. He connected the watch to his computer and opened an audio file. Static crackled, then voices emerged. First Miranda's, sharp with anger. I have the proof, David. Falsified research data, manipulated trial results. Do you know how many patients could be harmed by this? Palmer's voice followed, initially placating. Miranda, be reasonable. The technology works. We just accelerated the timeline. By lying. Miranda shot back. I'm going to the board first thing tomorrow, and the FDA. You'll destroy everything we've built. No, you've destroyed it, Miranda retorted. Ted Royce isn't acquiring Pinnacle, he's gutting it. I've seen the real agreement you tried to hide from me. A pause, then Palmer's voice suddenly cold. I can't let you do that. Put that down, David. Sounds of a struggle followed. Objects falling, Miranda's voice calling for help, then a sharp crack. Unmistakably a gunshot. Silence, then footsteps. The sound of a phone being dialed, followed by Palmer's breathless voice, It's done. Your turn now. The recording ended. Lucas straightened, his expression grim. We've got him. Not just him, Emily pointed out. That call after the murder, someone else is involved. Royce, Lucas confirmed. Palmer eliminated the M problem. Now it was Royce's turn to complete the takeover. This is enough for arrest warrants for both of them, Emily said, already reaching for her phone. As Lucas stepped away to coordinate with the DA's office, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing something. Why had Morris pointed them toward Pharmatech so explicitly? What had she meant by looking into who benefited most? Before he could pursue that thought, Emily called him back to Reed's workstation, her expression stunned. Lucas, Reed found something else on Palmer's laptop. A folder of documents from Miranda's office that he photographed after killing her. The images showed financial records with a highlighted name that made Lucas's blood run cold. Mayor James Matthews. According to the documents, the mayor held substantial shares in Pharmatech through a family trust, disguised through layers of shell companies. The Pharmatech acquisition would have made Matthews millions, Emily said quietly. And look at the date. These offshore accounts were created 3 years ago, right after you investigated the mayor for corruption and were shut down by the department. This isn't just about corporate greed, Lucas realized. It's about political power, too. The final piece clicked into place. Why the chief had warned him to tread carefully, why the mayor had called repeatedly about the case. The web of corruption extended beyond Palmer and Royce, reaching into the highest office in Ravenswood. Chapter 5. In the interrogation room, David Palmer sat rigidly in the metal chair, hands folded on the table before him, a public defender at his side. The carefully cultivated image of the confident executive had crumbled, leaving behind a man who looked both trapped and dangerous. Lucas placed a small speaker on the metal table and hit play without preamble. As the recording played, Palmer's face drained of color, his expression shifting from shock to resignation as he heard the damning evidence of his own voice, the sounds of struggle, and finally the gunshot. Lucas stopped the recording. Miranda's smartwatch captured everything, Palmer. Palmer stared at the device, a muscle twitching in his jaw. For a full minute, he remained silent, calculating options that were rapidly disappearing. His public defender, a harried young man clearly out of his depth, whispered urgently in his client's ear. That's inadmissible, the defender protested weakly. You had no warrant for the watch. Actually, we did, Emily said from the corner of the room. It was listed in the warrant for Miranda Lou's personal effects. The defender deflated. Palmer remained silent, his breathing becoming more labored like a cornered animal. We have everything, Lucas continued, laying out photographs of evidence. The falsified research data, the offshore accounts, the forged acquisition documents. He placed each item on the table one by one. The fake passport, the cash, your gun, recovered from the recycling dumpster behind your building, ballistics matching the bullet that killed Miranda. Beads of sweat formed along Palmer's hairline, his fingers trembling slightly. Your plan was perfect, Emily smirked. Except, of course, for the watch, and the security cameras, and the cell tower pings, and the money transfers. Another minute of tense silence passed. Lucas gathered the photos, preparing to leave. Wait, Palmer said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Then louder, wait. Lucas paused. I want a deal. Palmer straightened, a strange calm suddenly settling over his features. David, don't, his lawyer began. Shut up, Palmer snapped. He turned to Lucas, lowering his voice. I'm not going down alone for this. Lucas sat back down. We're listening. Palmer glanced at the recording device. Yes, I killed Miranda, but it wasn't supposed to happen that way. His voice took on a pleading quality. I just needed to convince her to delay going to the board. The gun was for persuasion. Things escalated. Premeditated murder, Lucas stated flatly. No. Palmer's hand slammed on the table. You don't understand the pressures I was under. There are powerful people involved in this, people who don't take failure as an option. Real fear flickered in his eyes. I'm just the fall guy here. Who was on the other end of that phone call? Emily asked, moving to stand beside Lucas. Who did you tell it's done? Palmer's eyes darted between them, calculating his leverage. I want witness protection, federal custody. Get me out of Ravenswood. That's not how this works, Lucas said. You give us something substantial first, then we talk to the DA. Palmer leaned forward, lowering his voice to a near whisper. Pinnacle's neural interface technology was never meant just for medical applications. The military potential is worth billions. Direct neural control of drones, enhanced soldier performance, even interrogation applications. He licked his lips. Ted Royce is just the public face. There's a network of investors behind Pharmatech who want that technology at any cost. Names, Lucas demanded. Palmer shook his head, genuine terror crossing his face. Not without protection. These people have reach inside prisons, inside police departments. I'm already a dead man for telling you this much. Lucas gathered the evidence and stood. Think about your position, Palmer. The recording alone is enough for first-degree murder. I didn't plan to kill her, Palmer insisted, desperation rising in his voice. It happened in the moment. I never killed anyone before. Tell that to the jury, Lucas replied coolly. You don't understand. Palmer's composed veneer completely shattered. When these people approach you, saying no isn't an option, they showed me pictures of my sister's children at school, for God's sake. He ran trembling hands through his hair. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking you to understand what you're up against. Lucas paused at the door. We'll be back. Think about how much you want to share next time. In the hallway outside, Emily turned to Lucas. That wasn't just a performance. He's genuinely terrified of someone and trying to position himself as another victim, Lucas nodded. But his fear seems real. Should we move on Royce now? Emily asked. Let's first pay another visit to Miranda Lou, Lucas replied. Something about her gallery operation never sat right with me. She might be the connecting thread we need. The Azimuth Gallery bustled with the lunchtime crowd. Art enthusiasts mingling with business people on extended breaks. Lucas and Emily bypassed the main exhibition space, heading directly to the administrative offices at the rear. Through the partially open door of Linda's office, Lucas could hear her speaking in tense, hushed tones. Palmer's failure to handle the situation cleanly has complicated everything, she was saying. No, I haven't been questioned again, but it's only a matter of time. Linda fell silent, apparently listening to the person on the other end. I understand. I'll make the arrangements as discussed. The usual fee applies. Lucas knocked and pushed the door open without waiting for a response. Linda's head snapped up, naked panic flashing across her face before her professional mask slipped back into place. She terminated the call without saying goodbye. Detective Sinclair, Officer Carter. She gestured to the visitor chairs with forced casualness. What brings you back so soon? Interesting phone conversation, Lucas said, remaining standing. Who were you discussing Palmer's situation with? A colleague regarding artist representation, Linda replied smoothly. You misheard. I don't think so. Lucas's gaze dropped to her desk, where several documents bearing the Pharmatech logo lay partially visible beneath a portfolio. Those seem out of place in an art gallery. Linda casually slid the portfolio to cover the documents more completely. I have diverse investments. Including Pharmatech? Emily asked, moving to get a better view of the desk. I'm a business owner with a portfolio that extends beyond art, Linda replied, her tone cooling. Is that relevant to your investigation? Lucas stepped forward, placing his hands on the desk. It becomes relevant when you're discussing Palmer's failure to handle the situation cleanly with someone while Pharmatech documents sit on your desk. Her composure cracked slightly. You're overreaching, Detective. We know about Palmer and Royce's long-standing connection, Emily said. Your role is the missing piece. Linda stood abruptly. I'd like you to leave now. Unless you have a warrant, this conversation is over. Lucas didn't move. Miranda discovered a fraud that would have harmed countless patients relying on Pinnacle's technology. Then she was murdered. If you had knowledge of this scheme but weren't involved in her death, Now is the time to clear that up. Linda was quiet for a moment, then sighed and sank back into her chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I didn't know he was going to kill her, she said quietly. But you knew about the rest, Lucas pressed. She looked away, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping an anxious rhythm on her desk. My relationship with Miranda ended badly, but I never wanted her dead. Her voice dropped. David approached me about a year ago, said he needed someone with my connections for some sensitive business matters. What kind of connections? Emily asked. I move through Ravenswood's elite circles without raising eyebrows, Linda explained. The art world intersects with business, politics, old money. I host private events, facilitate introductions, maintain a certain social standing that opens doors. You were their back channel, Lucas stated. Linda nodded reluctantly. I arranged meetings, delivered physical documents too sensitive for electronic transmission, sometimes held materials temporarily. She gestured to the Pharmatech papers. I was well compensated with consulting fees through my gallery. What did you think they were planning? Emily asked. Linda met her gaze with surprising directness. Initially, I believed what David told me. They were working on a beneficial merger that some stakeholders might resist. But over time, she hesitated. The secrecy increased. The demands became more urgent. I began to suspect something wasn't right. Yet you stayed involved, Lucas observed. By then I was already implicated, Linda replied, bitterness edging her voice. And there was something else, something personal. What? Linda's mouth tightened. After our divorce, Miranda made sure I was systematically excluded from the art circles that mattered in this city. Donors mysteriously withdrew support from my gallery. Prestigious artists suddenly became unavailable. She was basically strangling my business. Her eyes hardened. Working with David gave me financial security and connections Miranda couldn't touch. Revenge, Emily said quietly. Justice, Linda corrected. At least that's what I told myself. I never imagined it would end with her death. Who were you speaking with on the phone? Lucas asked. Linda hesitated, fear briefly crossing her face. One of Royce's associates. They're concerned about exposure. Names, Lucas demanded. I don't know specifics, Linda insisted. I was deliberately kept in the dark, but I do know this network extends into City Hall. Lucas straightened. We'll need a formal statement and all communications related to your work for Palmer and Royce. What about protection? Linda asked, real fear in her voice. If certain people discover I've cooperated. That depends on how fully you cooperate, Lucas replied. For now, an officer will remain outside the gallery. Don't leave town. As they left the Azimuth Gallery, Lucas turned to Emily. Miller's documents showed financial irregularities, but Linda's involvement suggests this conspiracy is more intricate than we initially thought. We need to talk to Miller again, see if he has any information about the military applications Palmer mentioned. You think Miller might have held back during our first interview? Emily asked as they got into the car. Lucas hesitated. Maybe. And if Miller was genuinely afraid for his safety before, he might feel safer coming forward with everything now that Palmer's in custody. And we need to understand the full scope of what Pinnacle was secretly developing. Greg Miller's apartment building looked even more dilapidated in the afternoon light. The elevator remained out of order, forcing them to climb the 3 flights of stairs again. Miller answered their knock immediately, as if he'd been expecting them. I saw the news about Palmer's arrest, he said, stepping aside to let them enter. I figured you would come back. The apartment was notably tidier than before, with stacks of papers organized on every surface. Miller had been busy. We have some follow-up questions about what Palmer said when he fired you, Emily began, taking the offered seat. Miller nodded grimly. Hang on a minute. He retrieved a laptop from his desk and placed it before them. After I was fired, I knew Palmer might try to silence me permanently. I made copies of everything, encrypted them, and stored them on secure servers. Despite the NDA? Lucas asked. Self-preservation trumps legal agreements, Miller replied, opening files on the laptop. What I discovered went far beyond financial irregularities. The screen displayed technical specifications, restricted research protocols, and communications with military contractors, all hidden from Pinnacle's official records. Palmer was running 2 parallel research tracks, Miller explained, his voice gaining intensity. The public medical applications that Miranda championed, and a classified stream developing military and surveillance applications of the same neural interface technology. Emily studied the documents with growing concern. Neural control of weaponized drones, enhanced cognitive functions for field operatives, direct-to-brain sensory feeds for covert surveillance. Applications worth billions to defense contractors, Miller added. The breakthrough that Miranda achieved in medical neural interfaces had profound military implications. The ability to directly connect human consciousness to external systems opens possibilities that go far beyond helping paralyzed patients walk. And Miranda had no knowledge of this? Lucas asked. None, Miller confirmed. The shadow research was compartmentalized, funded through the financial irregularities I discovered. When I started connecting the dots, Palmer moved immediately to get rid of me. How did he threaten you? Emily asked. Miller's expression darkened. He made it clear that if I spoke out, I wouldn't just face legal action. He said verbatim, "There are people invested in this who make problems disappear permanently. Choose your next moves carefully." Why didn't you come to the police? Lucas asked. Miller laughed bitterly. With what concrete evidence? And against Ravenswood's business elite? Without Miranda's backing, I was just a disgruntled ex-employee making wild accusations. He shook his head. I needed to gather more proof while staying under the radar. He pulled up another file, an email thread between Palmer and an encrypted address. This is crucial. Palmer was feeding Pinnacle's neural interface specifications to Pharmatech for at least 2 years before any acquisition talks officially began. The acquisition was never legitimate, Lucas realized. It was a cover to absorb Pinnacle's technology while eliminating Miranda's ethical oversight. Exactly, Miller nodded. And in the weeks before her death, Miranda had started investigating the same financial discrepancies I'd flagged. She called me for clarification on certain accounting practices. I believe she was finally connecting the dots. Lucas studied the documentation. We'll need copies of everything. Already prepared, Miller said, handing over a sealed envelope containing USB drives. Despite my fear, I couldn't let this disappear. Miranda deserved better. Emily's phone rang. After a brief conversation, she turned to Lucas with urgency. Reeds analyzed Royce's phone records. He received a call from Palmer's phone at exactly the time captured on Miranda's smartwatch recording. Her expression was grim. There's more. Financial records show Royce wired $1 million to Palmer's Maldives account the day after Miranda's murder, disguised as a consulting fee. Lucas stood. That's enough for arrest warrants for both Royce and Linda Lou. Let's move. Back at the station, officers prepared to execute search warrants at Pharmatech headquarters. Lucas found District Attorney Catherine Chen waiting in the conference room, reviewing their case. The evidence against Palmer is compelling, Chen acknowledged, but connecting Royce in this broader conspiracy will be challenging in court. The phone records and financial transfers create a clear link, Lucas argued, and Miller's documentation of the shadow research establishes the motive. Chen nodded. I'll prepare charges for Palmer for first-degree murder, corporate fraud, and conspiracy. Royce as co-conspirator, and Linda Lou as an accessory. Emily entered with a file marked confidential. We found something, Lucas. She spread documents across the table, files recovered from Palmer's seized devices. These are communications between Miranda and the FBI, dating back 3 months. Lucas examined the documents with growing realization. Miranda was working with federal authorities to investigate Pharmatech before agreeing to the acquisition. She suspected fraud in their clinical trials, Emily explained. Their results seemed too perfect. When she discovered Palmer's involvement and the military applications, it accelerated her timeline. Chen studied the documents. This strengthens our case substantially. The premeditation is clear. Emily placed another document on the table. There's more. This is from Miranda's secure cloud storage, a list of investors in Pharmatech through various shell companies. The document revealed several prominent Ravenswood business leaders alongside offshore entities. Most striking was a name near the top, Matthews Family Trust. Mayor Matthews, Lucas said quietly. He has significant financial interest in Pharmatech. Chen's expression turned grave. This just got considerably more complicated. It explains the political pressure from the beginning, Lucas said. The mayor's repeated calls to Chief Watson, the emphasis on handling this appropriately. Investment alone isn't illegal, Chen cautioned. We'd need to prove knowledge of the fraud and murder plot. His financial stake gives him motive to want the acquisition to succeed at any cost, Emily pointed out. Chief Watson appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I've just received a call from the mayor's office inquiring about the status of the case. She studied the documents on the table, her eyes lingering on the Matthews family trust entry. I see you've made some interesting connections. How do you want us to proceed, Chief? Lucas asked, watching her carefully. Watson was silent for a moment, her gaze moving between the evidence and the detective. Finally, she straightened. Follow the evidence wherever it leads, Sinclair. No exceptions, no special treatment. Her voice hardened. If this reaches into City Hall, so be it. Lucas nodded, surprised but grateful for her backing. We'll focus on Palmer, Royce, and Miranda Lou first, but the investigation continues up the chain. I'll coordinate with the FBI regarding their existing investigation, Chen said before walking out of the room. Chapter 6. Lucas and Emily stood on the marble steps of the Ravenswood County Courthouse facing a wall of reporters. Cameras were flashing and microphones were thrust forward by eager hands. This was the media circus Lucas had been dreading since the case broke. Detectives, is it true Palmer forged the victim's signature after her death? Called out a reporter from the front row. Lucas leaned slightly into the microphone. We have evidence that Mr. Palmer attempted to complete the Pharmatech acquisition using documents bearing the forged signature of Miranda Lou. These documents were dated after Miss Lou's murder. And Ted Royce? What's his involvement? Shouted another voice from the crowd. Emily stepped forward. Mr. Royce has been charged as a co-conspirator. Evidence suggests long-term coordination between the defendants to defraud Pinnacle Innovations and its shareholders. What about Palmer's claims of a wider conspiracy reaching into City Hall? Lucas felt, rather than saw, Chief Watson stiffen beside him. The investigation is ongoing, he replied carefully. We follow the evidence wherever it leads. The chief smoothly took over, her authoritative presence immediately commanding the crowd's attention. That's all for now. Mr. Palmer's arraignment has concluded with all charges being upheld. Further questions should be directed to the district attorney's office. As the media dispersed, Watson guided Lucas and Emily to a quiet corner of the courthouse steps, her practiced smile fading once they were out of earshot. Good work, both of you, she said, her voice lowered. The case against Palmer and Royce is solid. Thank you, Chief, Lucas responded, noting the careful phrasing. Watson's eyes hardened slightly. Just be mindful of how you proceed, Sinclair. Powerful people are watching this case very closely. She glanced toward City Hall, visible several blocks away. Palmer is desperate. He'll say anything to deflect blame. With respect, Chief, Emily interjected, the financial links we've uncovered suggest his claims might have merit. I'm not saying don't investigate, Watson replied, her tone measured. I'm saying verify every detail 3 times over before making accusations. Palmer's courtroom theatrics about a network of corruption have already set phones ringing across the mayor's office. Understood, Lucas nodded, though his expression remained resolute. Good. Watson checked her watch. I need to brief the commissioner. Keep me updated on any significant developments. She hesitated, then added more quietly, and Sinclair, watch your back on this one. The memorial service for Miranda Lou was held at Pinnacle's atrium, transformed by floral arrangements and enlarged photographs of the company's founder. Employees filled every available space. Lucas stood at the periphery, observing. The turnout spoke volumes about Miranda's impact, not just as a CEO but as a leader who had inspired genuine loyalty. She would have hated this, came a voice beside him. Greg Miller had approached silently, now dressed in a somber suit rather than his usual rumpled attire. All this ceremony, Miranda preferred action to sentiment. You knew her well, Lucas observed. Better than most, Miller acknowledged. I joined Pinnacle in its 2nd year, when the company was still operating out of a converted warehouse. Miranda worked alongside everyone else, often sleeping at her desk, to solve particularly challenging problems. A sad smile crossed his face. She could be demanding, even harsh sometimes, but never asked anything of others she wouldn't do herself. They watched as a young researcher took the podium, fighting tears as she described Miranda's mentorship. "What happens to Pinnacle now?" Lucas asked quietly. "The board met yesterday," Miller replied. "They voted to keep Miranda's core research team intact and continue her legitimate work. Palmer's shortcuts have been abandoned." He adjusted his glasses. "I've been asked to return as financial director to help untangle the mess." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations." "It's bittersweet," Miller admitted. "I'd rather have Miranda back, fighting with me over budget allocations." He hesitated before continuing in a lower voice. "She reached out to me, just days before she died. Said she'd discovered discrepancies that reminded her of what I'd flagged before my termination." "Did she mention specifics?" "No, she was cautious, even paranoid about being monitored. Wanted to meet in person." Miller's expression darkened. "The meeting never happened." "You've helped bring her killers to justice," Lucas offered. Miller nodded grimly. "Small consolation, but it's something." He extended his hand. "Thank you, Detective, for caring enough to dig deeper when it would have been easier to settle for the obvious." As Miller moved away to join a group of colleagues, Lucas spotted Linda Lou entering the atrium. Despite her pending charges as an accessory, she'd been permitted to attend under police supervision. The assembled employees parted before her like water, their expressions ranging from confusion to barely concealed hostility. Lucas watched her lay a single white lily beside Miranda's photograph, her face showing grief before the officer accompanying her led her to a seat at the back. The Ravenswood Police Department was filled with activity when Lucas returned that evening. The Palmer case had energized the homicide division, with officers working extended shifts to process the mountain of evidence. Lucas was surprised to find District Attorney Catherine Chen waiting in his office, examining the caseboard. Her tailored suit and perfectly styled hair seemed out of place amidst the organized chaos of his workspace. "Detective Sinclair," she greeted him without turning. "Impressive work." "Thank you, Madam DA," Lucas replied, setting down his files. "What brings you down from the courthouse?" Chen finally faced him, her expression carefully neutral. "Federal authorities have taken an interest in your case. The Securities and Exchange Commission and FBI are assuming jurisdiction over the securities fraud and potential corruption aspects." "That was fast," Lucas noted, keeping his tone even. "The case has significant implications beyond Ravenswood." Chen perched on the edge of his desk. "I'll handle the murder prosecution locally, of course. Palmer and Royce won't escape justice." "And the corruption?" Something flickered in Chen's eyes. Caution, perhaps. "That's precisely what I wanted to discuss. What exactly did Palmer tell you about connections to City Hall?" Lucas studied her carefully before answering. "He claimed to be taking orders from powerful people with reach inside various institutions. Mentioned military applications of Pinnacle's technology that attracted high-level interest." "Vague accusations from a desperate man," Chen observed. "Perhaps," Lucas conceded, "though the financial evidence suggests otherwise." Chen straightened. "Be careful, Detective. Palmer's murder charge is straightforward. These other allegations, they require extraordinary proof." "Justice shouldn't depend on who's being accused," Lucas remarked. "In theory, no." Chen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "In practice, accusations against prominent figures require bulletproof evidence for your protection as much as the integrity of the case." Lucas leaned back in his chair. "You seem particularly concerned about the City Hall angle. Any specific reason?" "Just professional caution," Chen replied smoothly. "Mayor Matthews has expressed interest in the case, given Pinnacle's importance to Ravenswood's economy." "I'm sure he has," Lucas said, recalling the mayor's early and frequent calls to Chief Watson. Chen gathered her belongings. "Keep me informed of any significant developments. My office can provide additional resources if needed." As she left, Lucas noticed she'd been standing directly in front of the portion of his caseboard mapping financial connections between Pharmatech and city officials. Emily appeared in the doorway moments later, clutching a folder and a cup of coffee. Was that Chen leaving? She looked intense. "The feds are taking over the financial fraud aspects," Lucas explained. She seemed particularly interested in what Palmer might have said about City Hall connections. Interesting timing, Emily replied, setting down her coffee. I've been digging into Mayor Matthews' finances. She opened the folder to reveal investment records. Matthews maintains significant investments through his family trust, which owns shares in several venture capital firms that hold substantial positions in pharma tech. She rubbed her eyes tiredly. When I tried to access more recent financial records, I hit a wall. They're sealed by court order for security reasons. Security reasons? For a public official's finances? Unusual, right? Emily frowned. I've requested clarification through official channels, but I'm not hopeful. Lucas was about to respond when Chief Watson appeared in the doorway. She glanced pointedly at the open financial documents. I see you're pushing forward with all angles, she observed. Just following the evidence, Chief, Lucas replied evenly. Watson closed the door behind her. Your primary job was solving Miranda Lou's murder, which you've done successfully. Palmer and Royce will face justice for their crimes. But if there's a wider conspiracy, Emily began, then it needs to be approached carefully, Watson interrupted. But it does need to be approached. She leaned against the door, her expression resolute. If corruption reaches into City Hall, the fallout could be catastrophic, not just for the individuals involved, but for public trust in our institutions. This isn't just about one murder case anymore. Lucas met her gaze directly. We understand the stakes, Chief. Good. Watson straightened. Because if you pursue this, and I believe you should, you need to be prepared. Your careers, reputations, even personal safety could be at risk. Powerful people rarely surrender power willingly. Emily exchanged a glance with Lucas. Are you giving us official approval to investigate potential corruption in the mayor's office? Watson chose her words carefully. I'm acknowledging that evidence in a homicide investigation sometimes leads to unexpected places. Following that evidence is your job, regardless of where it leads. She turned to leave, then added, just remember that some battles are won through strategy, not frontal assault, and make absolutely certain of your facts before making accusations against the mayor's office. The burden of proof rises exponentially with the target's influence. After Watson left, Emily gave Lucas a worried look. She's giving us the green light while maintaining plausible deniability. Smart, Lucas admitted, and necessary if this goes as high as we suspect. This could end our careers if we're wrong, Emily said quietly. Lucas turned back to the caseboard. And if we're right, it could end much more than that. The following afternoon, Lucas and Emily prepared for their interview with Linda Lou. The formal plea agreement had been finalized that morning, and Linda had agreed to provide comprehensive testimony against both Palmer and Royce. How do you want to approach this? Emily asked as they reviewed their notes. She's already admitted to being Palmer's go-between. I want details about the City Hall connections, Lucas replied. She mentioned Palmer having protection from the top. We need names, dates, specific meetings. And if she doesn't have them? Then we follow whatever threads she does provide, Lucas said, gathering his files. Linda's survival instinct is strong. She'll give us what she can to save herself. In the interview room, Linda Lou looked paler than usual. Without her carefully applied makeup and designer clothes, dressed now in standard-issue clothing for defendants in custody, she seemed diminished. Yet her posture remained proud, her gaze direct as Lucas and Emily entered. Lucas set a recorder on the table and pressed record. Emily leaned forward and began speaking. This is Officer Emily Carter with Detective Lucas Sinclair, interviewing Linda Lou regarding case number 2024-HC1142. Miss Lou is represented by counsel and has agreed to this interview as part of her plea arrangement. Emily paused and Lucas took over. Miss Lou, you've accepted a plea deal as an accessory after the fact in exchange for your testimony against Palmer and Royce. Is that correct? Yes, Linda confirmed, her voice steady. My attorney has explained the terms. For the record, please state your understanding of those terms. In exchange for my complete and truthful testimony, I'll face reduced charges with a recommendation for minimal sentencing, Linda recited. I'll also forfeit all financial gains received through my participation in the scheme. And you understand that any deception or omission voids this agreement? I do, Linda nodded. I'm prepared to tell you everything. Lucas leaned forward. Good. Let's start with your initial involvement. When and how did Palmer approach you? Approximately 14 months ago, David invited me to lunch, Linda began, her voice professional and detached. He claimed he wanted to clear the air after our affair and the subsequent fallout with Miranda. During that lunch, he mentioned business opportunities that could benefit my gallery if I was interested in some discreet consulting work. What did that entail initially? Arranging private meetings between David and various business associates, including Ted Royce. My gallery's private room provided a venue away from prying eyes. Linda's fingers drummed lightly on the table. These meetings escalated to document exchanges, temporary storage of materials, and eventually message relaying. Did Palmer ever mention specific goals for these arrangements? Linda hesitated before answering. He framed it initially as preparing for a merger that would revolutionize medical technology, but required absolute secrecy for competitive reasons. Her expression hardened. As time passed, he became more candid about sidelining Miranda to gain control of Pinnacle. Was murder ever discussed? Emily asked bluntly. Never explicitly, Linda replied, looking genuinely disturbed. David mentioned contingency plans if Miranda proved obstinate, but I assumed he meant legal maneuvers or corporate tactics. Lucas studied her carefully. You mentioned earlier that Palmer referred to having protection from the top. Can you elaborate? Linda glanced at her attorney, who nodded slightly. David often implied he had powerful allies shielding the operation. Once, after several drinks, he boasted that City Hall would ensure any regulatory hurdles disappeared. Did he name specific officials? Not directly, Linda admitted, but he arranged meetings at the Ravenswood Club, a private establishment frequented by the city's elite. I observed him meeting with several city officials there, including individuals from the mayor's office. Can you provide dates for these meetings? Linda nodded. My assistant maintained my calendar. I've already authorized her to provide those records to your department. She leaned forward slightly. Also, those meetings correlated with key approvals Pinnacle needed for its expansion plans and zoning variances. Correlation isn't causation, Emily noted. True, Linda conceded, but when identical patterns repeat over months, coincidence becomes less plausible. Lucas presented her with photographs of several city officials. Can you identify any individuals Palmer met with specifically? Linda pointed to several faces, including Deputy Mayor Harris and Zoning Commissioner Wilson. Most concerning was her identification of Mayor Matthews himself in 3 separate instances. Were you present for these meetings? I facilitated introductions, then typically withdrew, Linda explained. However, I did overhear pieces of conversation relating to expedited approvals and mutual interests being served. Did you maintain any records of these interactions? Linda exchanged another glance with her attorney. As insurance, she admitted. Nothing explicit, but my gallery maintains security footage of our private room for insurance purposes. The recordings should include Palmer and these officials arriving for or departing from meetings. Lucas nodded. Those recordings would be extremely helpful to our investigation. I thought they might be, Linda replied. My attorney has a flash drive containing relevant footage. Consider it a gesture of my commitment to full cooperation. As the interview continued, Linda provided additional details about financial arrangements, document exchanges, and the increasingly frantic communications in the days leading up to Miranda's murder. There's one more thing, she said as they prepared to conclude the interview. The night Miranda was killed, Palmer called me sounding agitated. He said that a complication has been handled, and that I should destroy any documents in my possession. When I pressed for details, he hung up. Her voice cracked slightly for the first time. I knew then that something terrible had happened, but I convinced myself it couldn't be what I feared. With a nod, Emily stopped the recorder. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Lou. An officer will escort you back to your cell. As Linda rose to leave, she paused. Detective Sinclair? I know this doesn't absolve me, but I truly never wanted Miranda dead. My resentment toward her was real, but so was my respect for her brilliance. Lucas nodded acknowledgement, but offered no forgiveness. Some lines, once crossed, allowed no return journey. After Linda was escorted out, Emily turned to Lucas. If her security footage confirms meetings between Palmer and city officials coinciding with suspicious approvals, that could be the breakthrough we need. It's still a long way from proving the mayor knew about a murder plot, Lucas cautioned. But it establishes a pattern of corruption that might extend further than we initially thought, Emily pointed out. If the mayor and other officials were helping fast-track Pinnacle's projects while secretly investing in pharmatech, then they had financial motives to support the acquisition by any means necessary, Lucas finished. The question is how far they were willing to go. Emily gathered the interview notes. What happens when these powerful people realize we're investigating them instead of just Palmer and Royce? They will fight back, Lucas said grimly, with resources and influence we can't possibly match. So what's our next move? Lucas considered for a moment. We continue to build our case, follow the evidence, document everything, and we watch our backs.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for new videos every week.